everyone, and welcome to Milano Men's Fashion Week, brought to you by Camera de la Moda. I am your host, Elizabeth L. Cline, and I'm a journalist and author, and I am so delighted to be here with Adrianne Hollis. She is an environmental justice advocate, attorney, and environmental toxicologist, as well as the climate justice and health scientist at the Union of Concerned Scientists. Welcome, Adrianne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. The Union of Concerned Scientists, it's been around since 1969. Can you tell us a little bit about what the organization does and your role there?
Right. So the organization really uses science to inform policy to solve our planet's most pressing problems. My role is to ensure that environmental justice and vulnerable communities, or communities that have been put in vulnerable positions, but disproportionately impacted and who have traditionally not had a voice, to make sure that they are included in any policy developments and legislative actions.
And I'm really interested in this word that you coined during the pandemic called syndemic. Can you kind of describe what that word means and how it gets at the intersectional nature of the pandemic we've just gone through, as well as some of what we saw in Washington in the US last week?
Sure. So the term syndemic was first coined by a scientist, Meryl Singer, in 1990s, and introduced to me by one of my colleagues. And what it is when you have two or more linked problems, or two or more afflictions that interact synergistically and contribute to an overburden of disease. For example, we have COVID-19 and the pandemic and how it affects communities, and some communities more than others, communities of color. On top of that, these are the same people who are exposed to environmental contamination because of systemic racism. Systemic racism, of course, itself is a disease that is inherent in the way the United States works. And then also the effects of climate change. Because of systemic racism, these same populations are affected first and worse by adverse health effects.
And are you feeling optimistic with the administration change? How do you think that's going to change your work there at the university, or excuse me, at the Union of Concerned Scientists?
Yes, I am optimistic, and I think science in general is on an definitely an uptick. The importance of science has been before the last 4 years was pretty apparent, and during the last 4 years there's been an open war on science. And what we see just from the people that have been hired by the incoming administration is that science will again be in a place of importance, and the authority that you get from actual data and data analysis is really going to be impactful when it comes to policy development and protecting communities and protecting the public in general.
And the one other thing I want to ask you about is, you work in the space of policy change and also grassroots movements to build political power. What role, the fashion industry is very interested in tackling systemic racism, climate justice. They're starting to have these more intersectional conversations. What role can companies and brands play in solving these issues?
Well, I have to say that the fashion industry, as a lot of people know, is already responsible for about 10% of global carbon emissions. But we've also seen a movement by some in the fashion industry to look at more sustainable ways of developing fashion. More sustainable ways of the supply chain, and integrating that and addressing workforce issues and labor relations issues. So what we need is more of that, and we definitely need a focused effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If we don't, at the rate that we're going, the fashion industry will increase their emissions by more than 50% by 2030. And so here's a big group, a large group of people who can really contribute to us reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by working together and actually working with the public to develop ways that are more sustainable.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And I really hope we start to see some more movement in that direction this year. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights.
Thank you.